why are email newsletters so important, and how exactly do you write them so the people reading them actually care and click on the links that you have in your email newsletter? That's exactly what we're talking about today. So whether you're an author or a business owner that is just trying to send out emails to newsletter subscribers, today we're going over the basics of how to get your subscribers to open your newsletters, read them, and hopefully buy whatever you're trying to sell in your newsletter. And if you're an author, that is the book that you wrote. Hello everyone, my name is Mandi Lynn. I'm an author, book cover designer, and the creator of the Book Launch Planner series, and I make weekly videos on the business of being an author. So if that sounds good to you, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a new upload. So, first things first, why are newsletters so important? So, the modern day business person has to be on social media. We've basically all come to that conclusion. But what sets newsletters apart from social media is that social media algorithms are constantly changing, whereas a newsletter is direct access to your followers. Sometimes you can post something on social media and only about 50%, if you're lucky, see your post. Whereas if you email your followers, they all will see the email. It's just not guaranteed whether they'll open the email. So that's where the magic comes in, is getting people to open and read your email and hopefully buy whatever you're trying to sell inside of your email. Before we go into writing our email, let's talk about what our goal of our email newsletter should be. There's two main goals that your email newsletter should have, and that is to entertain and then sell. Entertainment comes first, selling should come second, and naturally if you're entertaining someone. In case you're wondering what platform you should use to host your newsletter, I personally use Kit, formerly known as ConvertKit. I use it because it allows me to create multiple landing pages and forms. It allows me to create multiple automations, and I can send as many emails as I want. I can easily sort my newsletter subscribers because I actually have two different newsletters. I have my Mandi Lynn, which is my YouTube channel, and then I have Mandi Lynn Bell, which is for my fiction books. So I use Kit for both of these, and it's all under one thing, but I'm able to sort my newsletter subscribers. Now, today's not a tutorial on how to use Kit for your email newsletter. I just thought I would mention it because it's what I use personally, and I've used it for many years now. I'm also an affiliate for them, so if you want to use my affiliate link to check out Kit, it'll be linked down below. But let's go ahead and let's talk about what to write in our newsletter. Now, if you're an author, you are very familiar with writing books. So it may feel odd to be very intimidated to write a newsletter, but I want you to think of your newsletter as kind of writing a short story. Because remember, I said the first thing that we want to do as a goal with our newsletter is to entertain our subscribers. And if we entertain them, we can hopefully integrate natural selling of whatever products we're putting in our newsletter. The thing I hear most from authors who are trying to create email newsletters is they don't know what to write. And really, that's what we're going to be talking about today. I've broken it down into 6 simple steps of knowing what to write in your newsletter in a way that will both entertain your subscribers, but also keep things relevant enough that you're also making sales. Step 1, let's brainstorm ideas on what to write in your email newsletter. So I want you to write down whatever topics you personally enjoy talking about. And this does not have to be related to your books technically. We want people to subscribe to our newsletter not only for our books, but also because they enjoy us as a person. So putting your interest into your newsletter is helpful. Plus, if you're interested in the content that you write about, it comes across and is usually more enjoyable to read as well. Now, if what you want to write about also happens to do with your books, that's a bonus. So, for example, my books for my fiction pen name, Mandi Lynn Bell, have elements of travel and hiking in them. So, naturally, my newsletter can also have elements of travel and hiking. And that's also a hobby that I personally have. So, it actually makes a lot of sense for me to write about that in my newsletter and to be able to naturally incorporate my books into it as well. My first book, Meet Me at the Summit, also involves a road trip using a VW bus, and Me and my husband recently purchased a VW bus. So this is great for me because I can incorporate our trips with our VW bus with selling Meet Me at the Summit. So what I want you to do is just write down a bunch of ideas of things that you're interested in and would want to write about for your newsletter. Step number 2 is to choose 4 different content categories. So from your long list that you brainstormed, I want you to choose 4 different topics that you can talk about in your newsletter. So like I said, mine is things like traveling and hiking, but for you, it might be crocheting, it might be chickens, I don't know. But the point is that you let your newsletter subscribers get to know you. Because when it comes to our books and the publishing world, it takes a really long time to publish a book sometimes. So if you want to send out a monthly newsletter, you're not going to have an update every single month. But if you have a garden that you like to tend to, or you like to crochet, you might have an update on that every month. And you want to make it a fun and engaging story. So choose 4 topics that you'll be writing about in your newsletter. And you're not going to be writing about every single topic in every single newsletter. Instead, you're going to be rotating through these topics. And in case you're wondering what the topics are for my newsletter, I have reading, and then we have the VW bus, general travel, and then of course hiking, because those are all things that kind of are incorporated into the books that I write. It doesn't have to be that way, but for me it's just really convenient that it works out that way. So let's move on to step 3, which is to create a content schedule, because like I said, though we have 4 topics, we're not going to be talking about every single topic every single month. So what you want to do first is you want to decide how often you want to send emails. I personally send 1 email a month through my fiction newsletter, but I send 1 email a week using my YouTube/nonfiction newsletter that you guys are probably a little more familiar with. And that's because I make weekly YouTube videos, so my YouTube videos are in every single newsletter. But with my fiction newsletter, I just send it once a month because I don't have as many updates. Like I said, publishing a book takes a long time. And if you only email once a month, you might want to only do like 2 or 3 topics rather than 4 topics. That way you can rotate through the topics a lot quicker since you're emailing less frequently. So like I said, every time you send an email, you're only going to be talking about 1 topic. So in the month of October for my fiction newsletter, we're going to be talking about some sort of hiking story. And then the month of November, we'll be mentioning my VW bus. And then in the month of December, we'll be talking about whatever books that I'm currently reading. Or more likely, I'll probably talk about all the books that I read in the past year. So now that we have our content schedule, let's move on to step 4, writing the email. There's at least 2 things you want in every single email. The first is an entertaining story, and the second is a call to action. And ideally, you only want 1 call to action. You can have more than 1 call to action, but if you have more than 1, you're less likely to have people actually do the call to actions. And that's actually why for my nonfiction/YouTube newsletter, I started to do weekly newsletters, because I had too many call to actions in 1 newsletter if I only did it once a month. So I found I got more results when I did newsletters weekly. Whereas my fictional newsletter, where I just talk about the books that I write and of course the content categories that I talked about, I don't have as much things to have for call to actions, so I can only do it once a month. And if you're an author, your call to action is going to be buy my book. So for example, for the month of October, where I have a newsletter about hiking, I can talk about maybe some of the hikes that I did recently, especially with fall foliage, maybe show some fun pictures. And then I can say, if you want to experience hiking yourself, make sure to check out my book, Meet Me at the Summit, The Trail to You and Me. You get the idea. But you also only want to choose 1 book that you're going to sell. So if you're an author with a huge backlist, you can have each newsletter focus on a different book that you're trying to sell. So for the hiking newsletter, where I talk about fall foliage, I will try to sell The Trail to You and Me, because that's the book that has the most hiking elements. Whereas November, where I talk about my VW bus adventures and give updates to my subscribers on my personal VW bus, I can also try to sell Meet Me at the Summit, where the main character does a road trip using a VW bus. You get the idea. And then I also like to include photos when I can because they're fun. Now let's move on to step number 5, which is writing our email subject. Now this is going to be the thing that makes or break whether or not someone actually even opens your email. Because like I said, having email newsletter subscribers means you have direct access to them, but not everyone is going to actually go ahead and open your emails. So you want to make sure your email subject is enticing enough that people want to click on it. The first thing you can do to make it enticing is to personalize it. So you can personalize it different ways depending on what type of email host you're using. Like I said, I use Kit, and Kit allows me to do a certain tag that when I collect people's email addresses, they also give me their first name. This means I can personalize emails to them, whether it be in the subject line of the email or even in the body of the email saying, "Hey, Emily, here's what I've been up to." Or you can even incorporate their name into the subject line. One thing not to do is to use the word free in your subject line. Now, I'm definitely guilty of using the word free in my subject line sometimes, especially when I have something like a free download and I want to include that in my subject line because it's free. But that can be tricky because certain words trigger the bot on people's emails to sort your stuff into the junk or spam folder. So just be wary of using words like free in your subject line. Another thing you can do to get people to open your email is to make the subject line urgent or timely. That way, it's not something that they can see in their inbox and be like, "Oh, I'll open that later on today." You want them to see it in their inbox and be like, "Ooh, I need to open this right now. That sounds really interesting." And that brings us to our last step, which is step number 6, hitting send. So after you've done all the work of creating your email in the subject line, you want to actually send the email. I personally always schedule mine out. I tend to write my newsletters at least a couple of days in advance before they actually get sent out. Mostly because 9 times out of 10, I write it and then a day or two later remember something that I wanted to include in it and then go back and edit it. But once the email is sent out, you want to collect the data on the email. You want to see what the open rate was, what the click rate was. And depending on what your results are, you may want to change your content plan going forward based on that. So if you write a story about crochet and you find people are really engaging with it, but then you also write a story about your chickens and you find people aren't engaging with it, you may say to yourself, "Hey, I'm not going to write about my chickens anymore, but I will write about crochet." And in the same light, you want to notice what type of headlines are causing people to open your emails, and what type of content is it making people click on the links inside your emails, because this is all data you can track. You can track your open rate, you can track your click rate, and there's varying opinions on what a good open rate and click rate is. The more emails you send and the more data you can collect, you kind of get an idea of what average is for you. And then you'll be able to respond accordingly when you know whether or not one newsletter did good versus another newsletter that maybe didn't do as good. The biggest thing here is that you want to be consistent with whatever you're doing. I know, especially when you're only sending newsletters once a month, it's really easy to forget to send newsletters because it's not something you're doing on a regular basis. So definitely make a habit of it. Maybe put a sticky note on your corkboard or your desk just to send yourself a reminder. What I personally do is once I finish sending one newsletter, I create a task for myself to send the next newsletter the next month. And I have a digital content calendar where I see, okay, I need to write the next newsletter. So I hope you enjoyed all of these tips. These are all tips that I'm currently working on implementing for my fictional newsletter, Mandi Lynn Bell, because that's a newsletter that I've been rebuilding from the ground up. Within the past year, I decided to start this new newsletter, and I haven't really had ideas for content up until now, where I've come up with this plan after hearing from many other creators online and seeing what they do for their newsletters. So this is the content strategy I'm currently working to implement for my fictional newsletter, Mandi Lynn Bell. So if you're interested in seeing how that newsletter goes, or if what I talked about today made you interested in hearing more about my fictional books, make sure to subscribe to that newsletter. I will leave it linked below. You can also subscribe to my YouTube newsletter where I talk about these YouTube videos, and then I also talk about my nonfiction books about writing and marketing books. If you want to learn more about author newsletters in general, I highly recommend checking out my book, Grow Your Author Platform, because that is just one pillar of book marketing that we talk about in that book. Or you can check out the entire Marketing for Authors series, because each book in that series covers a different type of book marketing. Otherwise, that is it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and make sure to like, comment below, and subscribe.